You have $4.1 million and nobody in your family knows. Not your mother, not your father, not your older brother who still thinks you're doing all right at your job. You're not hiding it because you're ashamed of it. You're hiding it because the moment they know, everything changes, and you're not ready for everything to change. The number arrived in a text from your financial advisor. No exclamation point. Just Q2 statement is in your portal. Let me know if you have questions. You read it standing in your parents' kitchen, translating a cable bill for your mother because the automated phone system doesn't have a Bengali option and never will. This is what $4.1 million actually looks like. It starts with a suitcase that weighed 38 kilograms and a father who counted $340 in cash 3 times on a plane because he didn't trust himself to remember the number right. You were 9. You don't remember the flight, you remember the apartment after. 1 bedroom, 5 people, a mattress on the living room floor that your parents took turns using so at least one of them got a full night's sleep. Your father drove a taxi for 11 years. Your mother sewed piecework for a garment contractor in Queens, paid by the piece, not the hour, so a slow week meant a thin envelope on Friday. Nobody talked about money in that apartment except to say there wasn't enough of it. You learned early that money wasn't a topic, it was a weather system. It happened to you. Nobody explained how to make it happen for you. That changed on a Tuesday in your 20s, not because of a revelation, but because of a laundromat receipt. Your mother sent you to pick up the family's wash. She still didn't fully trust the dryers at the new place. And while you waited, you watched the owner. An older Korean man, quiet, unbothered, collecting quarters from 18 machines that ran themselves. He wasn't doing anything. The machines were doing everything. You did the math standing there smelling like fabric softener. 18 machines, maybe $1.75 a load, 3 loads a day average per machine. That's not a job. That's a system. You went home and looked up how laundromats actually work, how they're bought and sold, what a lease assignment is, what coin route means. It took you 4 nights of research after your actual job ended, which is 4 nights longer than most people would spend on a passing thought in a laundromat. What you found, small laundromats in immigrant-heavy neighborhoods, the kind nobody from finance backgrounds bothers to look at, could be bought for $60,000 to $150,000 and often threw off $30,000 to $50,000 a year in net income for an absentee owner. Not glamorous, not the kind of thing anyone posts about. Just a number sitting on a spreadsheet at 1 a.m. while your parents slept 2 rooms away. You didn't have $60,000. You had $9,000 saved from 3 years of a job you were embarrassed to admit paid you well, because your parents equated a good job with a suit and a title, not a decent salary and quiet savings. So you found a smaller one. A 4-machine operation attached to a dry cleaner in a strip mall, priced at $14,000 because the owner was retiring and didn't want to deal with a broker. You bought it with your savings and a $5,000 loan from your uncle that you paid back in 8 months, on time, to the dollar, because you understood something early. Family money comes with memory attached. You never wanted anyone remembering a debt you owed them. The first year it netted $7,200. Your cousin's wedding gift that year cost more than that. Nobody congratulated you. Nobody knew there was anything to congratulate. You sat with that number on a Sunday night in your childhood bedroom, which you still hadn't fully moved out of, and felt something that wasn't quite pride and wasn't quite embarrassment. It was quieter than both. But you didn't stop, because you weren't looking at the $7,200. You were looking at what it proved, that a system could run without you standing over it, the same way your parents' whole life had required them to stand over everything, always, with no exceptions. You bought a second one 14 months later. Then a small 6-unit rental building in a neighborhood 2 towns over from where you grew up. The kind of property your father would have called, not a good area, without knowing it was quietly filling up with young families who paid rent on time because they, too, understood what it meant to not miss a payment. Here's what nobody sees. Not the compounding, not the 11 years of Tuesdays, just a person doing spreadsheet math at midnight in a bedroom with a poster still taped to the wall from high school. Your accountant is named Priya. She's second generation herself, built her own practice from nothing, doesn't impress easily. She sits across from you with a folder you handed her and reads it slowly. "This is the most boring portfolio a first-gen kid has ever shown me," she says. She means it as an observation. You take it as the highest compliment available. Here's what the folder contains. 3 laundromats across 2 boroughs, combined net income around $94,000 a year, running almost entirely without you, because you hired a route manager 2 years in who checks each location twice a week and takes 12% for the trouble. A 6-unit residential building, fully occupied, netting roughly $61,000 a year after the mortgage, taxes, and a property manager who is, unglamorously, your father's old taxi dispatcher, a man who needed steady work after the medallion market collapsed and who you trust completely because you've known him since you were 9. A small commercial cleaning contract you picked up almost by accident, servicing 4 medical offices, netting around $38,000 a year, with almost no overhead beyond payroll for 2 part-time workers. And a modest but growing portfolio of index funds you've been quietly funding every month since your first laundromat check cleared, currently sitting just over $1.9 million, untouched, uncelebrated, growing the way water finds its level. Priya asks if you're planning anything more aggressive. A franchise play, some real estate development, something with a bigger swing. You tell her no. She nods the way people nod when they understand the answer but not the reasoning behind it. What she doesn't fully see is the logic under the boredom. Every one of these assets solves a need that doesn't disappear. People will always need clean clothes. People will always need somewhere to live. Offices will always need to be cleaned. There's no app disrupting a laundromat in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner that's been there since 1994. There's no venture capitalist coming for your 6-unit building. You are, on purpose, standing in the most uninteresting corner of the economy that exists, because uninteresting is the same thing as stable, and stable was the one thing your childhood never had. There's a guy at your cousin's engagement party, 3rd generation on his side, family money, talking loudly about a Series A he's raising for an app that helps people split restaurant bills. He's wearing a blazer that costs more than your first laundromat's down payment. He asks what you do. You tell him you're in facilities and property management, which is technically true and says almost nothing. You watch him make the calculation. Facilities, property management, not finance, not tech, not impressive. He smiles politely and turns towards someone with a business card. In his head, you've been sorted. That sorting is worth more to you than anything he'll say the rest of the night, because the moment someone underestimates you, they stop watching you, and the moment they stop watching you, you can build whatever you want. This is what people misunderstand about staying quiet in immigrant families specifically. They think it's about humility. For you, it's a strategy layered on top of an older, more complicated instinct, the fear of being seen as having made it, too visibly, too soon, in a way that invites obligation. Because in your family, visible money isn't private, it's communal by default. The moment your uncle knows, your uncle's cousin knows. The moment that cousin knows, there's a phone call about a restaurant investment, a nephew who needs tuition, a family friend whose son needs a job at one of your properties. None of it malicious, all of it heavy. So you drive the same Honda Civic you bought used in college. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment that costs less than 1/3 of what your income could support. Your parents think you're comfortable, stable, doing better than expected for someone who didn't become a doctor. They are not wrong. They are just missing several zeros, and you have decided, carefully, that this is not the year to correct that. Your brother calls on a Thursday night. Not to check in, you both know each other well enough to hear the difference. He wants to open a small grocery store, the kind that serves the specific immigrant community you both grew up in, the spices and rice brands and frozen parathas that the big chains don't stock. He's been planning it for 2 years. He needs $70,000 for the build-out and first year of inventory and lease. You could send it before the call ends. You could transfer it from your phone sitting in the laundromat parking lot without feeling it even slightly. To your current portfolio, $70,000 is roughly 6 weeks of passive income across everything you own. It is not a sacrifice. It's barely a decision. You don't send it. You sit with the phone against your ear and listen, and feel the specific, complicated weight of understanding a situation more clearly than the person living it. It isn't guilt. It isn't withholding out of spite. It's the same lesson your first-year net income taught you. Money handed to someone before the system underneath it is solid, doesn't build anything, it just delays the moment the cracks show, and delays it more expensively. So instead of the wire transfer, you ask if you can come by Saturday. You sit at his kitchen table with his lease draft and his supplier quotes for 4 hours. You find that his lease has a percentage rent clause he didn't fully understand, tied to gross sales, that could quietly eat his margin in a good month. You ask him what happens if his top 3 products get held up at customs for 6 weeks, which happens more than people think. He hadn't modeled that. You go back the next Saturday and the one after. By the 4th Saturday, he's restructured his opening inventory, found a state-backed microloan program for minority-owned small businesses, and renegotiated the lease's escalation clause down by 2 points. He signs 6 weeks later. He calls you the night he gets the keys, and his voice cracks a little the way it does when something you've wanted for 2 years finally becomes real. He says he couldn't have done it without you. You don't tell him what you could have wired him in 90 seconds. You will probably never tell him. That's not modesty. It's an understanding of what the story needs to be. His decisions, his risk, his name on the lease. In a way your money would have quietly erased. But there are rooms in your life nobody gets to enter. That doesn't get easier with time. It's not the secrecy itself, you made peace with that years ago. It's the specific weight of sitting across from your own brother, knowing you could remove his entire financial anxiety in the time it takes to open an app, and choosing, deliberately, not to. The text from your advisor comes on a Tuesday at 6:40 p.m. You're standing in your parents' kitchen, on hold with the cable company for 11 minutes, waiting to explain, again, that your mother's name is spelled correctly on the account and has been for 6 years. You have the portal open in one hand and the phone against your ear with the other, and you almost don't check it, because Q2 statements are never urgent. The number at the top says $4,108,000. You stand there in your parents' kitchen. Your mother is at the stove, half listening to your phone call, stirring something that smells like the version of your childhood you actually miss. Your father is in the next room watching the news at a volume that's been the same for 20 years. Neither of them knows. The hold music doesn't know. The cable representative who finally picks up, mispronouncing your mother's name for the 8th time, doesn't know. This is the moment. Not a celebration dinner, not a phone call telling you you've made it. Just a kitchen that smells the way it's always smelled, and a number on a screen that has been accumulating quietly through 11 years of Tuesday laundromat visits and Saturday kitchen table math sessions nobody photographed. You thought it would feel different. You'd imagine this the way everyone imagines a milestone, with some kind of seam between before and after that you'd physically feel. There is no seam. There is just the stove and the news at that same volume, and the cable representative finally confirming the spelling is correct and always was. You end the call. You correct nothing else. You help your mother finish stirring, because that's what you actually came here to do. 11 years ago, you netted $7,200 from a 4-machine laundromat and sat with that number in your childhood bedroom, not knowing what to call the feeling. It wasn't pride and it wasn't embarrassment. This is the same feeling, exactly the same, just with more zeros behind it. That's not nothing. It might actually be everything, because it means the feeling was never about the number. It was about proving that the system your parents never had access to, the one where money compounds quietly instead of disappearing into survival, could exist for someone who came from that 1-bedroom apartment with the mattress on the floor. You drive home the same way you came. Same Civic, same route, same version of you that everyone in this family has already decided they understand. Nothing about the outside of your life changes tonight. Nothing will change tomorrow either. Your brother's grocery store opens in 5 weeks. Your mother will call the cable company again next month, and you'll translate again. What's different is quieter than any of that. Somewhere in this ordinary week, you'll watch someone perform wealth loudly at a party, and you'll think about a suitcase that weighed 38 kilograms and $340 counted 3 times on a plane, and you'll wonder what your father would say if he ever saw the actual number. You still don't know if you're ever going to show him.